In part one of this brain snack, we saw how the emotional lives of boys and girls are different from the very beginning. At first, boys are the emotional trailblazers, showing more reactivity in response to stress even before they're born. Then this all changes, and women become the ones that struggle more to contain their emotions. Now, lots of factors influence an individual's emotional personality. You are a complex person, and many things contribute to that complexity. But three main factors contribute to this trend, this sort of flip flopping that we see in the emotional lives of men and women. Let's find out what they are. Number one, parents. People are socialized, almost from the time that they're born, to behave in ways consistent with the social norms of the place and period that they're born in. You think if you was born 200 years ago, halfway across the world, that you'd be the same person? You think the same things would make you cry? Probably not. Well, the vast majority of this socialization, especially early on, come from none other than mom and pops. So they play a key role in molding the emotional landscape of our brains and determining what it'll look like for the rest of our lives. In general, parents are highly motivated to raise children who will be accepted in the societies they live in, and therefore spend an exhaustive amount of time teaching them their interpretations of social rules, including the gender norms that will govern how their kids dress, what they play, and the ways they'll come to understand and express their emotions. Studies show that parents in Western societies, both directly and indirectly, teach their boys that it's okay to show emotions like anger and aggression, but not too much sadness, shame, or fear. They teach girls to be open and vulnerable about shame and fear, but not too boastful, mean, or aggressive. During childhood, boys are trained to control their tears, trained to control their emotions. And just like any training, the more you do it, the better you become. Parents more often allow girls to cry it out, so they get much less of this practice. Parents also differ in how they talk to boys and girls about emotions. Studies show that by the time they're 5 years old, not only have parents had more conversations with their girls about emotions, but the content and context of those conversations differ as well. When moms and dads talk to boys about emotions, it's more frequently in response to an upset. It's reactive. And they focus much more heavily on constraining their undesired emotion. When parents talk to girls about emotions, it's more focused on coping and understanding those emotions and their causes. Additionally, parents use more specific and positive language when talking to girls about emotions. But imbalanced parenting styles couldn't possibly explain it all. Otherwise, the magnitude of these differences, or how different men are from women, would be universal. And it's not. Studies show that the gap between the emotional tendencies of men and women is much larger in Western industrialized societies than it is in African, Asian, or more traditional societies. All across the world, women do seem to experience emotions much more intensely than men do. This is true. But what does it mean that men in collectivist cultures report experiencing emotions much more intensely than men in individualistic ones? And that women in Western cultures display emotions more intensely than women in non-Western ones? This shows that while genes and gender establish a sort of baseline for our emotional potential, the particular continent that our stork happens to drop us off at, and all of the social, historical, political, and even economic factors that characterize that country at that time shape and mold our brains into the emotional roller coasters or emotional walks in the park that they come to be. Societies that prepare women for low status work in a man's world mold girls' brains into the necessary emotional patterns of vulnerability and powerlessness. In other words, the more gender inequality, the more emotional inequality. So, socialization, what everyone thinks is normal, what everyone thinks is right, what everyone thinks is masculine or feminine, whether or not these things are based on fact, have profound effects on our brains, our lives, and our emotions. Lastly, puberty. Or rather, the different concentrations of hormones that men and women make beginning in their preteen years. You don't need a brain snack to tell you that hormones definitely influence our mood and emotions. There are a few I could talk about, but for the sake of keeping this a snack, let's just focus on two: prolactin and testosterone. Prolactin is a hormone produced by the pituitary glands of all men and women. One of its main functions is to stimulate the production of breast milk in nursing women. So why on earth do men and the rest of us make it? I'll tell you in another brain snack. For now, just know that women make a lot more of it than men. The average woman has about 2 to 3 times more of it floating through her bloodstream. Well, Prolactin has a side job. It's also heavily involved in our response to stress and makes it more likely that we'll cry when we're stressed out. When men in a lab are treated with the hormone, they're more likely to cry in response to an emotionally charged movie than men not treated with the stuff. Meanwhile, testosterone, the well-known hormone of manliness, responsible for most physical traits that we consider masculine, guess what else it do? Inhibits tear production. And men make a lot more testosterone than women. So let's imagine you have a man and a woman, and you put them in the same stressful condition. Both of their brains react similarly to that emotionally charged condition, so neither is really more emotional than the other. But because that woman makes less testosterone and more prolactin, she's more likely to break out the eye sweats and therefore more likely to be considered emotional, weak, crazy, less competent, less of a leader, less likely to make sound decisions. And all because those pituitary glands. So in sum, the word emotional is a loaded term, and trying to figure out who got more of it ain't easy. Boys lead the way early on in life, just crying up a storm, struggling to contain their emotions. But this shifts drastically by the time they become adults. What explains this shift? Biology, as well as culture, history, and the fascinating interplay between the three. If you found anything interesting or useful in this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so that you never miss snack time. And if you think someone else will find it useful, share your snacks with them. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next snack time.